talking with, longtime friend, trumpet player, composer. This is James Zollar I'm talking with. James began his musical career at age 9 playing bugle in his hometown right here in Kansas City, Missouri. At 12, he graduated to the trumpet, where he began to discover his musical voice and focus. After high school, he continued to study at San Diego City College and then the University of California at San Diego. At the same time, he honed his chops with various funk and jazz bands and leads his own straight-ahead quintet. One of the groups that he played with, that he had in San Diego, was the New Dynamics. In 1984, he moved to New York City and played with the Cecil McBee Quintet for 5 years and then recorded with Tom Harrell, with Weldon Irving, and Sam Rivers. Zollar was featured in Robert Altman's motion picture Kansas City, in Madonna's music video My Baby's Got a Secret, as well as Spike Lee's film The Best Man. He played on the soundtrack.
Actually,
what's that?
That's I'm sorry. That's it's not. It wasn't Spike Lee. It was his cousin.
Malcolm Lee.
Malcolm Lee. There you go.
Okay, I stand corrected, but we're gonna keep this in it. We're gonna keep this in the tape. Keeps it organic. Okay. Anyway, he played on the soundtrack of the Perez Family and is proud to be included in the Biographical Encyclopedia of Jazz, Oxford University Press, 1999. James was also a featured soloist with John Faddis and the Carnegie Hall Jazz Orchestra, as well as Wynton Marsalis's Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra. He remains in New York, where he stands out in a wide range of musical settings. Today, he's playing with the Duke Ellington Orchestra, working with several of Don Byron's bands, and also working with the New York City Blues Devil. Well, I want to say to you, everybody, this is James Zollar. How you doing, James?
I'm doing great, man. It's my pleasure to do this interview. It's definitely a pleasure.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we go back a few years. Our families go back a few years.
Yeah.
You know, I think we lived about 3 blocks from each other here in Kansas City. And,
yeah, that's what Alfred told me.
And for those listening, I actually went to school with James's older brother, Alfred. And I think we also at least attended Vacation Bible School over at Allen Chapel AME Church here in Kansas City.
Right.
I happened to run into Alfred when I was in the Navy station in San Diego, and ran into him at a club, and he was telling me, my younger brother, James, he plays in the band too. You might want to come and to a jam session he's playing at. And I went to this jam session in this club that used to be owned by a former defensive back for the Oakland Raiders called the Safety Club.
Yeah.
Heard this trumpet player, and I said, goodness, yeah, I got to hook up. I think we wound up playing at a gig later on that night.
Right, okay.
But kind of elaborate a little more on how you got started in music.
Well, first of all, just being from Kansas City, that's the spirit in itself, because Kansas City is back in the 40s and 50s, is pretty much a jazz town. And then, so from there, I really got serious about trumpet when I moved to San Francisco. That really helped. I studied with the late Woody Shaw in I think it was around 1975, 1976. So studying with Woody Shaw that just made me a little bit more serious, because at that time in the 70s, San Francisco was pretty much a mecca in the 70s for jazz. So living in San Francisco helped fuel the fire for my inspiration to play trumpet. And also, when I was living in San Francisco, I had a chance to just meet up with a lot of people, such as Eddie Henderson and Woody Shaw, of course. And there was a place there in San Francisco called the Keystone Corner, owned by Todd Barkin. And I was living in San Mateo, so it was like a 45-minute commute from San Mateo to San Francisco. So I got really inspired living in San Francisco. So I got really, really serious, more serious about the trumpet when I lived in San Francisco.
And I said, now that's after UC San Diego, right?
No, San Francisco was before UC San Diego. I was in San Francisco first, then I moved to San Diego.
Okay, so having had that influence with Woody Shaw, what did you gain out of the experience at University of California, San Diego? Was just you got more of the structure or what?
Yeah, well, what happened was when I went to UC California, San Diego, I was studying with people like there's a guy Cecil Lytle, a piano player and a composer from UC San Diego. Also, Jimmy and Ginny Cheatham. They have a band called the Sweet Baby Blues Band, and I was playing in UC San Diego in the jazz band, and Jimmy was grooming me actually for big bands. Back, Jimmy Cheatham was grooming me for big bands back before I started playing with big bands. So that really helped. For instance, he knew Duke Ellington, and So he was grooming me for New York, and also Jimmy played with Duke Ellington for a while. So Jimmy also was a good friend of Mercer Ellington's. So through Jimmy Cheatham, I gained a lot of big band experience as far as like various mutes and playing the blues, like the plunger, and just learning, getting my reading together, because that's really important to make a career out of music, is to get your reading chops happening.
In other words, it's kind of like something that conversation I had with Leonard Feather, noted jazz critic. He said, if you want to be able to jump into different bands, in and out of different bands, and as many different musical settings, as far as the living is concerned, you have to be able to read music very fast. I picked up on what you were talking about as far as reading music.
Right.
In other words, be able to, that sight reading is important if you're going to go from band to band to setting to setting to setting, more or less.
Yeah, you have to be pretty quick.
And so now, let's see. At what point did you leave and go on to New York?
You see, I was in San Diego. I left San Diego in the summer of 1985, and my sister was already here. She has a group called the Urban Bushwomen, and they're a dance troupe. And so she really helped me to get started as far as like having a place to stay, and she knew a lot of musicians in New York, and she was telling a lot of musicians, well, my little brother's coming to New York to live, and he's a good trumpet player. So through my sister, James Zollar, I met David Murray, which is a saxophonist out of California, and David Murray and Craig Harris. And a guy named Olu Dara, and living in New York. When I first moved to New York, I also met up with Lester Bowie, and he really helped my career a lot too. So through my sister, I gained a lot of exposure to various musicians, like the ones I just named.
Okay, so what added to your sound once you started? What did you pick up on once you started playing with people like Cecil McBee?
You know what? Playing with people like Cecil, I learned a lot about composing, actually, because Cecil is a great writer and composer. He made the best. Cecil McBee had a quintet, so he is an alto and a trumpet and rhythm section. So he knew how to write for two horns, and really in-depth writing. So playing with Cecil, I learned a lot about composing.
Did you, you was talking about, you emphasized the thing about writing for two horns. I hear a lot of groups that may just use two horns, and then when somebody tries to come in and play with them, another horn tries to come in and play, they have a tendency to really have to search to try to find, a space to really harmonize. Did you ever experience that? So go ahead.
Well, you know what, that band with Cecil, that was, actually, we really worked hard on that. Cecil found out about me through Lester Bowie, and like I said, Lester was a good friend. So meeting Cecil and Lester, it allowed me to get a concept as far as like soloing and just dealing with this small band context and learning how to play chord change.
Now you also played. Now you mentioned your experience. Talk a little more about your experience with the Duke Ellington Orchestra and what your primary job there was.
Okay, well, first of all, I met Mercer Ellington when I lived in L.A. because Mercer Ellington was based in New York, but sometimes he would fly to California, and he needed musicians to fill out the band because economics, he couldn't afford. Sometimes he couldn't afford to fly his whole band out there. So Mercer found out about me through Duke Ellington barber. His name was Ron Smith, and my first gig with the Duke Ellington Orchestra was 1983. It was at the San Diego Zoo and Disneyland. And playing with the Ellington band, I learned a lot about Cootie Williams and the plunger mute, which is the gut bucket blues style. So the plunger mute is basically comes from the blues tradition. And so playing with the Ellington band, I learned a lot about mutes, Pixie mute. Because Duke Ellington was into textures, as far as just getting different sounds out of a section. So with Duke Ellington, you had to utilize all your mutes, such as the mutes I just named: Harmon, Pixie, plunger, a straight, a cup, and solo tone mute. And it was, and I got in. Before I joined the Ellington band, I don't think I owned one Duke Ellington record. But now, of course, I'm very well studied on Duke Ellington now. So I didn't own a Duke Ellington record until I got in the band. But once I got in the band, I really devoured it. I went in with my eyes open and just really got inspired and learned a lot about Duke and writing and the way he wrote for different musicians and the plunger and his suites, and I just learned a lot. And anyway, Duke, I played with my first job was with Mercer Ellington in 1983, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. And I still play with the band today.
Okay, so are you you also played in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis?
Yes, I've been doing that for many years, on and off. I'm on one of his latest recordings. It's called Congo Square. It's a piece written based off folkloric African pieces, which the African musicians were a group out of Africa. They're called I forget the name of the group. Anyway, I did work with Wynton Marsalis and Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra for now going on 15 years, on and off.
Now, him ever being the educator himself, tell me about what you picked up from him that you've incorporated into your sound.
Well, with Wynton, he's also a great writer, and playing with a great trumpet player like that inspires you to practice so much. And I would say he's a perfectionist as far as like getting the best out of his musicians as possible. And as far as like the trumpet section and just each section, you know how to rehearse a band. He knows a lot to rehearse a band, and I learned a lot about rehearsing a band through Wynton also.
Now, how did you get in a position to play in what was it, the Robert Altman movie, Kansas City?
Let me see. I had that opportunity working with a guy by the name of Butch Morris. Butch Morris is a conductor for David Murray's orchestra, and for that Robert Altman movie, nobody had to audition to handpick the musicians who they wanted, but they wanted cats to have like old school style. So that was the prerequisite for getting that movie. Was I think they recognized that I could play old like the plunger stuff and the blues thing that I mentioned before.
Now, when you participated, did you do your recording there in New York, or did you come to Kansas City to do any of it, or what happened?
You mean the Kansas City movie?
Right.
Oh, you know what? That's funny you mention that, because actually that Kansas City movie, everything was done in Kansas City, downtown Kansas City.
It was important to me because I have an older brother that had a bit part in it, and I know a couple other people that did. So I don't know how much you hung out once you got here at home, to do the work. So.
We did it. We had. I was filming for 2 weeks on location in Kansas City. They built a makeshift. It's called the Hey Hey Club, which was the original hangout spot for jazz musicians in the 40s and 50s. And we filmed for 2 weeks. And Robert Altman wanted it authentic. That's why he wanted to do everything in Kansas City, because Robert Altman himself is from Kansas City.
Exactly. And you did some work with Madonna.
That was just a video. It was me, Panama Francis, and little Jimmy Scott.
Okay.
And the video is called My Baby's Got a Secret, as you mentioned before. And that was a lot of fun. I was just pantomiming, playing keyboard.
Okay. And what did you do in the we'll talk about the Perez family and the Best Man.
Yeah. First of all, the Perez family, I was actually on the soundtrack. The Best Man, I was actually on camera, okay? So the Best Man we did on camera. We did that on location here in New York also. And a lot of great stars were in that shoot with me. A lady named Nia Long. I think the guy's name is Morris Chestnut. So anyway, we did that. Best Man was filmed on.
Okay, and we're back with James Zollar, trumpet player, composer, actor, what have you. And okay, now let's see. You've got some recordings of your own out, as a matter of fact, don't you?
Yeah, I have 2 CDs on my own, as well as being maybe on 75 recordings, but I have 2 CDs of my own. The first one I did in 1996 is called Soaring with Bird. That's all features all Charlie Parker stuff. Charlie Parker was from Kansas City. That was a great opportunity. And my second solo CD was first of all the first CD I did, Soaring with Bird, that was done for a company out of one of the companies. They're a classical company called Naxo, and I did all Charlie Parker tunes. The second recording, like I was going to mention, is called Zollar System, and that features a lot of my writing, and that's self-produced, and me and my wife produced that ourselves. And I get a lot of compliments about it. Everybody was really happy about the outcome of my first self-produced solo CD, which is called Zollar.
You've also done some work with some of the local musicians here when you get a chance to come in town, don't you?
Yeah. I sometimes I work. I grew up with the McFadden brothers. Our families knew each other, so every now and then I play in the Blue Room, and they come and sit in, and me and Bobby Watson are very close. And the last time I was in Kansas City, I played with Bobby Watson in the Blue Room. We put together a group with the front line was me, Bobby Watson, and David Snitter, and then the piano player named Harold O'Neill, Kansas City.
Okay, and have you had a chance to at least jam with Gerald Dunn, our jazz disciple?
Yes, indeed. Gerald came to my gig which I had at the Blue Room, and he sat in with me, and he played tenor saxophone. Got a big sound. Boy, that guy is dangerous. So anyway, I had the pleasure of Gerald gracing our stage too during that visit about 3 years ago.
Yeah, watch out. He's pretty dangerous on that alto, too.
Oh, I never heard him play alto.
Oh, man.
Okay.
I heard him at the Musicians Foundation the first time I'd really sat down and listened to him, and I had to come off that front row. He was scaring me with that alto, man.
Yeah, okay. Next
wailing.
time I'll look for his alto playing. Thanks for telling me.
But you've also done some work with Tower Power's keyboardist Roger Smith as well.
Yeah. Actually, I'm on one of Roger's recordings. I don't know if it's out. I don't know if it's out yet. But and sometimes I sit in with Tower Power. They're all good friends of mine. So sometimes they let me play with them a little bit. And yeah, Roger's a very good friend of mine. We're talking about collaborating on actually coming to Kansas City at the Blue Room.
Oh, that'll be great. Well, listen, yeah. I just want to know what's in the off in the near future that you have that you've solidified that you're going to be doing project wise.
Okay, well in the next on January 26th I will be doing a Lewis Smith project. Lewis Smith is a trumpet player. He recently had a stroke, but he was under the radar. He was one of those guys that really didn't get his due because he went into the education system. But he played with Horace Silver, Art Blakey, and he's got a lot of records on steeplechase. So I'll be doing the music of Lewis Smith and at January 26th at a club here called Small. So I'm getting the music ready for that. And after that, I'm still working with the Count Basie Orchestra actually. And Basie wasn't from Kansas City, but he's from Red Bank, but he established his name and band in Kansas City back in the 40s and 50s. So I got some things coming up with them. I've done 2 recordings with the Count Basie Orchestra, one with Tony Bennett, and one is called the Salute to the Jazz Masters. It features a bunch of great players such as Hank Jones, Curtis Fuller, just a bunch of great players. So as far as like the immediate future, I'm working on this Lewis Smith project, and I'm still in and out with the Duke Ellington. Well, the Duke Ellington Orchestra is my main job, and so I'm bouncing between the Duke Ellington Orchestra and Count Basie Orchestra right now. So that's pretty much it as far as like my future things are going on. I got some projects. The Lewis Smith project is something I'm really, really, really looking forward to.
Hey, well, James, it was really good talking with you. And I look forward
to... Yeah, you too, Barry.
I look forward to seeing you sometime. We can sit and rehash some of them old times in San Diego.
Yeah, okay.
And get a chance to hear you play. And who knows, we might contact some of the cats from the old band or something like that and trade some laughs with them, too.
Yeah, such as Paul Benoit.
Oh yeah. Looking forward to getting him. I'm looking forward to getting him on this show. He said he's working on a CD. So.
Oh really?
Yeah. So and I always hear from him all the time on Facebook, and he always makes me jealous with those weather reports out there in Hawaii.
Oh, I know, it's beautiful out there.
Yes, it is. But anyway, it was a pleasure talking with you. You take care, and and continued success to you.
Thank you, Barry, and it's a pleasure. Pleasure was all mine, man. I'm glad we could do this interview.